well, welcome everybody to the CRE Arena, and today I am very excited. We have Larry Genet on the call, and a lot of you know Larry from LinkedIn and maybe having a massive industrial team in South Florida. Larry, you're doing a lot of really awesome things, man. I'm really excited to have you on the show. So, just man, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and as I just mentioned of a just brief, glimpse of what you are doing. And there's so many things to unpack. So I usually like to start of just like, man, how did you get where you're at today? And you can go over it, but I'm gonna go back in and dig into all the little things because I know you've just done like so many cool things. So yeah, how'd you get to where you are today? And what are you doing now?
Yeah, I think what I've been doing has only been getting cool in the last like 5 or 6 years or so.
Yeah, right.
Uh, Everything before that was kind of a train wreck, honestly. And I was just trying to figure out how to get to where I was supposed to be and what that looked like, and a lot of uncertainty and fear and trial and error and
Yeah,
missed opportunities and everything you could possibly imagine. Like with anyone's career generally that's trying to like push the envelope.
yeah,
I was definitely faced with a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, I really started out, as a kid. I like to say with a hammer in my hand as a little kid, chasing my dad around houses that he was building or renovating as a little kid. And then he would buy them for cheap and then renovate them and then sell them. And he would do that at multiple at a time. So he was always building or breaking something.
yeah, right.
And then, my uncle was in the business starting in the early 90s, and was buying and selling a lot of stuff. And I had some exposure to that too, definitely more later in my life. Being around his shop and seeing how he operated and interfacing with his staff and his employees, and his portfolio.
Yeah,
So I was always around it as a little kid. I was around my grandmother's motel. She had a motel in Hallandale Beach on the water that she would be the one scrubbing the floors and changing the sheets when people checked in and checked out. I remember sitting on my dad's lap as a little kid while he was checking people in and out of the hotel, and there were video games up in front by the front desk, and we would paint our
yeah,
quarters black or red, and we get all our quarters back, and and everyone else, obviously went to the guy who owned the machine or whatever.
yeah,
So just memories like that growing up, just being around real estate, it was always around me. It was the only thing my family ever really talked about. We weren't into like, culture or like
yeah.
movies. It was always real estate business centric, which I loved and
Hmm.
I found really valuable, and I learned a lot of very expensive hard lessons to learn very early and easily. So I had, I think, a hugely unfair advantage to most people because I was just always around things related to business and real estate, and that's always the topic of conversation at the table. So for me, it was like early and often, which is obviously a massive competitive advantage to someone who only runs into that stuff once they start high school or college or whatever, or
Right,
they get their first job. So I was way
right.
early, and real estate was a foregone conclusion for me. But then as I started to sort of evolve and was in school and sort of doing odd jobs and whatever, it was always also real estate centric. So, you know, I'd, follow a developer around for a summer carrying his briefcase, or I'd be painting a building on 41st Street with my brother for a couple of bucks, painting the front of the building,
Yeah.
as an odd job, or, working in property management, working in hotels. So I was always kind of around sort of jobs related to real estate or related to the service business.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of experience with hotels and the restaurant industry as well. But eventually, once I graduated and had to get a real job, I, um, I worked at a Radisson for a little while, and I worked at a boutique brokerage firm for a little while. And I learned a ton about myself and about management, about how to treat people and how to get deals done at both of those jobs. And then I started my own brokerage and kind of bounced around doing different jobs. You know, when I was young and getting started, I had three jobs
Hmm.
out of school. I had Guaranteed Leads LLC, which was a little like marketing company I had started where I was posting ads on Craigslist just to like pay my rent and stuff. I
Yeah.
was I was a broker at a boutique shop, just trying to figure out how to do deals, and unsuccessfully. And then my third job was an assistant property manager at a apartment building in Miami Beach. So I
Huh.
did the two side hustles, after hours or on weekends and whatever. And then during the week, I had a full-time job. So that was the only way I could figure out how to pay my bills and try to improve as a professional and like find my path or whatever.
Right, right. No, that's awesome, man. So I didn't know. So it's three generations. Like I said,
Yeah.
because I knew your uncle was in the business, and we've actually done deals together. But so it was your grandparents, and they were more. So I know you said a motel in motel beachside,
Yeah.
but was it so they were in the hospitality and restaurant? Like were they in that like sector of the business, or did they have multiple hotels or restaurants, or what was the MO?
It's funny you say like the hospitality. I don't think that they would say that they were the hospitality because the way they ran things. But
Yeah.
there's too much to unpack there. But yeah, they. So my grandfather was an attorney in Miami Beach, going back, you know, I don't know, in the whatever 50s, I guess,
Yeah.
and 60s, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was an attorney, and he would also do deals. Like he owned like a little apartment building. And he would just kind of buy and sell stuff. He never really bought and hold. He would always kind of buy and sell. From what I've been told, he passed away before I was born. My
Yeah.
grandfather on my dad's side, um, but he did buy land and sell land. So he would buy like a big tract and then break it off and sell it in smaller pieces, which was popular down here back in the day. It was all swamps and land and stuff.
Yeah.
And he got stuck with some of it, and the family ended up keeping some of it long term, and eventually ended up selling it to home developers in the '90s, and then sold another chunk of it later on to retail developers. So he was kind of in that game, and then he also owned some motels. My grandmother owned a few motels, like little choppy ones here and there, nothing really crazy.
Yeah.
By the time I graduated, all that real estate, for the most part, was pretty much gone, or out of control anyway. So when I graduated and I kind of came out of school thinking I was going to work in the hotel business or whatever, all that stuff is gone. So
Yeah.
there was no opportunity for me whatsoever. So I really had to like figure it out and go sort
Yeah.
of forge my own path, which was a blessing, obviously. Like you always
Yeah.
want to do it yourself. So, you know, I didn't think I would have to do it myself. So when that bubble burst, it was a real surprise to me, and it was a kind of a shock. And I had to figure out all my crap and get it together and go get a real job and
Yeah.
figure out my life. Especially because not that much later on, I met my now wife, Jessica, and I really cared about her, and I was serious about her, and I needed to have some kind of a career for her to
Yeah.
even consider marrying me. Although she
Right.
took a huge gamble, when we got together and we got engaged, she had more money than I did. She was more valuable as a human and as a professional than I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
like I
awesome.
wasn't bringing a whole lot to the table, and she really took a flyer on me, and I'm very grateful to her and her parents, my in-laws, who I love dearly, for allowing her to make a crazy decision and getting with someone who had no idea what the hell they were
That's
doing.
that's how you know she loves you for you, brother. That's
That's for
that's
sure.
it wasn't the money. It wasn't the
Right,
career. It
right,
was for you, man. So that's
right.
that's awesome. So when you graduated, did you go to school for, was it just business? Was it real estate and specifically, or what did you go to
Hotel
school for?
management. Yeah, I went to
Oh,
school
okay,
for hotel
wow.
management.
You were
So
really
like,
committed to the portfolio that wasn't there.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was all in on something that
Yeah.
didn't exist,
Poof.
which is sort
Yeah.
of the story of my life. But it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about management and how to treat people and how to run a service-oriented business. So I'm really grateful for all that experience because the customer service side of me never got lost, and I still
Yeah.
have that to this day. And while we're busy and there's a lot going on, and some deals you want to work on and some you don't really want to work on, so I have that optionality to pick and choose what I want to do. I always have the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of the email, the other end of the deal in mind, and I try to always remember that no matter what's going on, you want to give as best a service as you can to
Yeah.
everyone, whether they're a customer or not. So like just small detail and something specific to me. If somebody reaches out and wants something that I don't have as an industrial broker, most people's first reaction is probably to say, oh, sorry, I don't have that, goodbye, whatever, just short and just, discard it. For
Yeah.
me, I always have a solution that follows that. So, this isn't something that I can help you with. It's not something that I do, but you should call so and so, or you should go on so and so website. And I just take an extra second to kind of give them a way forward, which I don't know if I would just call that being considerate.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't take that extra second, and they're so wrapped up in their own heads with, all this ego
Yeah.
and stupid stuff that they don't really care about the people they're talking to. So I try and be on the opposite end of that spectrum.
No, I mean, and that's something like, just picking that up and having that trait about you to carry on to whatever else you do is just incredibly valuable. And that makes a lot of sense, man. And like, I think it means a lot from both sides because, whoever, say it's a tenant looking for a small space, it's like, I remember getting those leads early on in my business. They're like, the big dogs are like, hey man, this person needs, 2,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet. And like, I'm like, you want me to take the lead? Like, you want me to go like hunt for it? Like, yeah, man, I got you. I can do this. Like, hyped up about it. So the people you're sending those leads to, it's like trusting them with that opportunity means a great deal to like, to help somebody out, expand a business and also like put some money in their pocket and keep them in the business. So like, it means a lot from that angle, but also from, say the tenant in this example, like that's one thing I've never tried to lose is like, even though the deals get larger and like you said, hey, there's some, people that call my phone all the time that are looking for smaller deals or smaller spaces for lease or you want to sell a small building, whatever it is. I never want to lose the fact that somebody moving into a 2,000 square foot small bay for the first time is like probably like getting out of their garage and like this is the launch of something incredible. And especially it's like, hey, they're just starting, they're moving, they're expanding, and like, hey, they're usually signing 3 or 5 year leases. So like we're committed to this deal for the next like hey, like we are going to be engaged in this deal for the next 30 days, but like they're going to be in it for the next 3 to 5 years. Their kids are going to be there after school and like they're going to be growing their business in these spaces no matter how like small or big they are. So that's something that's so cool that you've kept with you, and I think is yeah, like I said, I think that's awesome that you got that from the hospitality industry and your education background. So man, that's awesome. So going from when you talked about having your own brokerage and when was that? So like when you started your own brokerage, because I wanted to talk to you some about like the model at CBRE and then like where you're from, because most people go the other way in a sense of like they want to, hey, I want to go out on my own or like have my own brokerage or have my own my own deal. So what was that decision like? And I know you were saying like, hey, you didn't have a ton of success there, so that may have been one of the reasons. But from like, hey, doing my own thing to then going to a more corporate model, even though I see you guys are still very entrepreneurial in what you do. I mean, commercial advisors are everywhere, but what was that decision like, and like kind of how and when did you get into CBRE?
Yeah, it was rough. So like 2008, 9, 10 was kind of like the range and where I was trying to do my own thing, and
Right.
obviously the world was completely falling apart. Um, I hadn't been successful enough at other endeavors, other jobs, other shops. I did many different things, not just brokerage, all in real estate.
Yeah.
All were, I would say, failures, and it just didn't work out. But then when 8, 9, and 10 happened, I pivoted to focusing on non-performing loans and non-performing pools of loans because that was what was trading. So I immediately formed lots of relationships with lenders, with their special servicing departments and their distressed debt departments, and they were all offloading stuff generally towards the end of the quarter. And some of these pools of loans were massive. I mean, they they $50 million plus dollar pools, and there were one-off small little buildings in the middle of somewhere in Florida.
Yeah.
So it was very small stuff to very large stuff, and I was just trying to match the pools of loans or the individual loan, non-performing loans with buyers. I learned a ton. I mean, a ton. Like I know a lot about buying distressed debt. If I ever find something that is distressed, like I'll know exactly what to do and how to do it. So it's great. But
Yeah, that
I
is
didn't
good.
really make any money. It wasn't successful. So I had a small office space that I had rented. I had, FF&E that I had bought,
Yeah.
and I had an assistant that I had hired. All completely the wrong things. Like if you're going to start your own business and you're dead set on starting your own brokerage right out of the gate, which I think is a terrible idea personally.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm sure someone can. It's just way easier doing it the other way that I'll talk
Yeah.
about in a second. Um, you know, it just was sort of a train wreck, and you had a lot of financial responsibilities. So the alternative to that, coming out of school and just starting your own brokerage, is joining a top producing team in a top tier market, hopefully, whether you have to relocate or not, and just basically taking the overflow of the deals. Like when I started here, years later, my first deal I did was 4,800 feet. It was 3 years. It was the company's name was Dolphin Beauty. It was in Tamarack in a prime property fund, Morgan Stanley owned fund. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life. The whole fee was like $3,500, and I was doing backflips.
Yeah.
And then I just continued to do more of those and more of those, like you said, doing the small deals and just figuring it out, making lots of mistakes and learning and growing. And then eventually found some listings and kind of went off from there. So starting from scratch alone sounds awful to me today. Whether you're me or someone else, I don't care.
Yeah.
But starting on a top producing team with lots of infrastructure and lots of overflow and lots of kind of smaller deals that nobody really has time to get to, or maybe there are some inefficiencies in how big they've gotten, how fast, and there's some things you can fix or some value you can add. That's where I sort of made myself valuable, and I'm confident that someone's career could take a 5-year leap in 1 year on a top producing team. Whereas if you're on your own or you're at a small shop or whatever, and there's not a ton going on, you're like a little sleepy, whatever, residential company,
Yeah.
that 5 years will take you 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's a game changer.
Yeah, and it could even take you longer because I've seen people of going with like, hey, you go with one shop and then it's like, man, that shop didn't like perform as they didn't give me the guidance or oversight that I needed, and they're not doing deals or whatever it is, and then they go to another shop and then another shop, and then so
Yeah.
you can still kind of be, I guess all of those are learning experiences, but yeah, being on a team that is like top producing, because it's reps, and it's reps are going to help anybody, but reps also like from a very high level perspective, because they're from day one going to get what 20 years almost of experience, like from you and from your team of like, hey, um, you know I've learned these mistakes, these things over the last 15, 20 years, and even on the smaller transactions, the little intricate details, like those apply to the big deals, but getting in the reps of the smaller deals is absolutely huge, which seems like a perfect time and plug. The position might already be filled by then, but Larry is hiring everybody. So real quick, tell me what you're hiring for and where to shoot an email, how to connect.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, I'm hiring for an associate role, so it's a business development role, mainly cold calling and just learning the market, learning the players, and trying to get us in front of opportunities that we can go together, pitch and win, and then go repeat the cycle again over and over.
Yeah.
So that's one of the roles, and then the other role is actually for what we call a client services coordinator, for a marketing position on the team. And we have a really robust marketing team run by Alana Horton, who's a total rock star. And she kind of runs she runs the business, but she also runs the marketing part of the team. And that person would be working directly for her when it comes to our specific crew. So
Yeah.
marketing position and associate broker business development role.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you guys can find Larry just about anywhere. You can Google him, but LinkedIn is probably a good place. And
It's easy.
shoot him a DM. That seems like a great opportunity for somebody that's, want to get into the business or level up and say, hey, be a part of a top producing team, not only from a like business development and production standpoint, but I mean, the marketing and administration, like that's, we know that is vital.
Yeah.
So to be a part of a winning team there is huge as well. So, and I just thought about it because you said it. So, with with your guys like business development, without like telling me the proprietary method, I know, and because markets differ, and you guys are in a much more like urban and dense market. So as far as like your outbound prospecting, like from a team perspective, I know yours looks different than somebody new you bring onto the team as far as method you're using. But what do you guys like to do with like, hey, say cold calling and then door knocking, or I mean some people are doing hard mails or direct mails, and all the different strategies there are. Like I said, without telling us too many of the secrets, what do you guys what's your guys kind of mixture and flow down there in South Florida?
Yeah, no, I mean, I share a lot about this. Obviously, I keep some things to myself because they're just so powerful and
Yeah,
important to our
yeah.
business that I could never share them. But, like, as an example, I mean, the number one thing is just to outwork everyone around you, right? It's super basic. I know you know this. Anyone who's kind of come up in the business and has had any kind of success knows that that is what it takes. You just have to outwork the guy sitting to your left and the girl sitting to your right, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So it's the effort and the work, putting in those hours. And for a long time, I put in 16-hour, days, and never took any vacations for years,
Yeah.
except for maybe going to New York to see my in-laws or something for not even a long, Friday afternoon to Sunday or whatever.
Right.
Until much later in my career, where I finally started to be like, okay, my kids are like 10 now. I gotta start taking a vacation or two here or there.
Yeah.
So it's outworking the people next to you and around you. It's through that adding as much value to the team as humanly possible. That's key. When I first started, I really just forgot about myself, and like I in my mind I envisioned like I don't matter at all, and all I've got to do is just make these guys that I'm working for as much money as humanly possible and grow them and their portfolio as much as humanly possible, and
Yeah.
eventually I'll find a way to the dollars, right? So
Yeah.
that was a very good way of thinking and philosophy, and just putting myself out of it and just being like, I'm gonna do everything I can to make these guys super successful. That was from an early start as a junior broker. That was key to my success. I really believe that. But for us, it's cold calling, it's door knocking, it's social media to a large extent. That's been hugely impactful for us. I've done numerous deals off of social media. I've gotten tons of referrals from all over the world from social
Yeah.
media that were very significant. This isn't like small little. This is like real stuff, real deals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So that's been huge. And then we do a lot of the direct mail. We do a lot of mailings. We aggregate people's locations in different ways. Sometimes it's through a third party that we pay for it. Sometimes it's public record. We use a lot of different software. I'm a big believer, and I talk about this a lot, and I don't really care if I'm repeating myself and people are annoyed with it.
Nah,
But
give it to us.
Naval has changed everything for me. This guy Naval, you could find him on Spotify. His Megasode is up there. It's like 2 hours and something. You can listen to it at 1.25 speed. It is the single biggest game changer of my life. And what he talks about is leveraging capital, labor for mutual benefit, and technology. And if you could, if you're a business development guy and you could generate business, you'll be successful. If
Right.
you're an execution gal and you just sit on a property and your job is to like manage that property,
Yeah.
not to pick a specific gender, just generally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're sitting on it, and that's your job. You can do well. You can make a good living. You can make a great living. If you can do both, you're very unique and special, and you can crush. But if you can build infrastructure utilizing capital, labor for mutual benefit, and technology around those people, all of a sudden you've got a real business, and you're not just what I like to call dudes doing deals, which is like, it's like the anti-broker mentality, right? And
That's pretty
If
good.
you want to be
Yeah.
a broker and you want to be a dude doing deals, fine, that's cool.
Yeah.
I got no problem with it. That's been me forever. But for the last like 4 years or something, I've been really obsessed with building something, just more than myself. I don't know. It just seemed like a natural progression, and Naval really opened my mind to that. And then there's other things that he talks about that are super critical, which I can get into later if you want. But for us, it's outworking the people next to you, or your competitors, if you will. Whether they're at your shop or other shops, doesn't matter. Just outworking
Yeah.
them, out innovating them, out marketing them. and then cold calling, door knocking, and leveraging capital, labor, and technology to drive the best possible results for your clients that are beyond what the market typically can deliver to that owner. So like for us, a big thing that we try to think about in the way we frame how we operate is we want to make the market. We don't want to get the market. Like anybody can get market. Anyone could put a sign in front of a building and send an email to a couple thousand brokers. That's like monkey business. It's nothing. Like anyone can do that. So what we want to do is we want to drive the market beyond where it is and set a new market. And if we can do that and we can demonstrate it through data, it would be really hard to like not hire us, right?
Yeah.
Because we have empirical data proving that we're the ones moving the market and constantly outpacing everyone else. So we've tried to do that sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully, but it's like how our minds are framed, and that's a big deal because everything we do is driven by intent, and that's how our minds are focused right now. So just driving outsized results for clients.
Yeah, that's really interesting, man. And you said that was Naval. Is that another podcast or what's
Yeah,
where do you find that?
I don't know what the name of the podcast is, but if you go to Spotify and you type in Naval, all his stuff will show up. He's got like, I don't know, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of followers. The guy's worth over $100 million. He was an early investor in Uber and all these other companies. He's like super famous, and he talks a lot about business and how to make money and stuff like that. But the stuff that I really enjoy from him is the philosophy. Like this guy is one of the deepest thinkers I've ever come across in my life. And he'll just spit something like randomly and you think about it and you're like, how do I not know this? This is like so basic and essential to life. Like super cool. So he's one of the greatest minds of our generation.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've like come across his content, so I definitely need to dig in. Have you?
I just like scratched the surface.
Dude, I'm excited. I have it written down here, so
he's
and
big
it reminds
on Twitter too. I don't know if you're on Twitter, but
I'm not much of a Twitter guy, but I know I need to be eventually, especially since Elon took over. I feel like that's more
that's when I jump back in.
The place to be. Yeah, it kind of reminds me. It sounds like a guy. So I've dug into a lot of Alex Hormozy's content. Don't know if you've heard about him,
Guy's
but
a boss.
Dude,
what a G. I'm obsessed with this guy.
Yeah, he's
so
he's
good.
crushing it, man.
He's so good. He's on another level.
Somebody asked me the other day, it's like why do you think, Hormozy's like blown up the way he did? And I was just like, I mean, because normally people, on Instagram, or any type of social media, it's like they usually have like kind of one or two of the things, maybe they're like they have the IQ and, they're just like very, very smart people. Mm-hmm. Or, it's Instagram and people are always like trying to look good, like the beach body thing, and I was like, man, this guy's got he's checking like 4 out of 4 boxes. Like he's absolutely yoked, super smart, super rich. And then he just like kind of rolls around in like wife beaters and Crocs and cut off jorts. So, if you guys haven't heard Alex Hormozy's content, he's got some good stuff there. And I guess Naval too. So
total badass. He's one of my favorite people that I follow online, and I've sent him many messages trying to connect with him.
That's funny, man. I read his book. I actually have his book in my backpack, and I went through it a few times. And his book is really, really good, and just kind of his model is much different than the market. And it's kind of it's allowed me to stretch in a way of like, hey, what different angle can you approach the market from? And it's almost like, like you're talking about like leading the market and setting the pace. It's hey, you can kind of fall in line of like the dudes doing deals or people selling things, or you can like I said, his perspective is like, hey, throw out the crazy, most high value information I can to help as many people. And then, you partner up and do like a private equity deal to grow their business. So it's a completely different way of doing things, which is really interesting. But no, since you mentioned about Naval, and I wanted to, get your thoughts on it. So when did you start investing in tech? I don't know if I've heard you talk about it before or saw it on your LinkedIn, and I don't know if it goes this way every time. If it does, I apologize, but I've seen you've done some cool like VC deals and stuff. So like, when did you start doing that? And what are you currently invested in? If you could share, like, what are you excited about, like in that space?
Yeah, it's not, so it's just that's me having fun basically. It's not like serious money or anything like that. I'm just messing around with friends and family that are involved in things that I think are interesting or have some kind of market value. Um, so it's really mostly through sponsors that I know and trust and do this kind of stuff for a living,
Yeah.
that are getting involved in deals and then syndicating funds from friends and family. So I have a couple of those guys that I go to for these deals. I don't think I've really done any direct investing that I know personally, the founder or whatever. I've only
Yeah.
done one of those deals really, but it's really small money. Like I said, the majority of what I'm investing in is real estate. So like when I go on a pitch, I put my money where my mouth is. Like I'm investing in my market every single day, more than most I would say, that maybe talk about investing or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm buying as much as I can, as often as I can, where I live and the markets that I think are and the markets that I sell in, mostly as an LP, as a passive investor. So there's no operational needs on my end. Generally speaking, there's a deal or two here I'll do or whatever. But so that's been huge for me. It's been huge from another income stream point of view. It's been huge for me because I'm part of writing big checks to brokers, and I understand what that feels like as an owner.
Yeah.
Writing big property tax checks, I understand, and insurance checks, I understand what that feels like as an owner. So when I come into a pitch or I'm speaking to an owner, they could feel confident at least that I'm not full of crap, like a lot of people are, especially down here in South Florida. It's insane.
Yeah.
A lot of people selling bogus stuff and just making all kinds of promises that they cannot keep. Which I'm not a fan of, and those
Yeah.
people's reputations are on the line, and everyone knows who they are and what they're up to. But
Right.
on my end, I can speak to things as an owner, and when I have a vacancy, I really do take it home with me. Like it's my vacancy, whether it belongs to the biggest owners in the world or a small mom and pop. Like when I have a vacant space, I'm throwing the kitchen sink at that thing, even if
Yeah.
the marketing dollars spent are more than the commission I'll receive. That thing better be leased, and I don't care what it takes.
Yeah.
And we've been known to do insane things and spend insane amounts of money, like six figures on marketing.
Wow.
So we're all in, and I look at my clients' real estate as if it's my own, and I do take it home with me. And my team feels the same way. Tom and Mike and Dinner and everyone else feel the same way. We've all been there, and we've all owned real estate, and we understand what it takes, and we take that really seriously.
Yeah, no, that's a great perspective to have, and whether it's from whatever side of ownership it is from, I've done LP deals and then bought deals more personally, and there's actually been a situation or two. It's pretty funny where you do an analysis for a client and you come back with and pricing and say, hey, this is where kind of we think it's at pricing wise, and I remember this one building was like. This was a few years ago, but it was like $70 a square foot. And they were just like, they had some heartburn about it or so, but there was like one of the comps on the comp table was my building that I sold for like $67 a square foot. So I was like, I believe in this price, and like it was, it was apples to apples. So I was like, I believe in this so much that like I actually sold my building for this number. Like this is a good number. And yeah, I'm one of the comps in line. So,
That's funny.
and it feels a lot different, man. And
Totally different conversation.
yeah, and I remember the first time when I read a lease for myself, like doing all the due diligence, but then also like reading one of the leases, and that was because normally attorneys are involved in like, hey, we understand the leases and are comfortable with them. And the first few years in the business, I was like, hey, just understand the terms of the lease and what's going on here and what to look out for. But when I read a lease for the first time, when like my name, like my entity was on it, man, I got done. I got done that day, and I went home, and I felt like I had the flu. I just like it was like it was a 40-page lease, and I just like every single line, and it was just absolutely brutal. So taking the time and like looking at it with from that perspective, and then after that, I was like, hey, I need to read my clients' leases more. I need to spend more time on them. Because attorneys are people too, man. Like attorneys can miss stuff too, and even though that's their job is the legal language and the lease, it's like, hey, it's our job and our responsibility for the success of this entire deal, and that's just one of the pieces. So like if we're in charge of the overarching deal, like, hey, that's a detail, that's a big detail, and it needs to be right. So
Yeah,
um,
especially now, like to your point, it's never been more important that to understand exactly what the hell's in these leases because you've got a spread in cap rates that's the size of the Grand Canyon
yeah,
when
yeah.
you compare a low wall weighted average lease term remaining deal to a high weighted average lease term remaining deal. So
Hmm.
like if your WALT is 7 years, you're at one end of the cap rate range, which is not where you want to be. And if
Yeah.
your WALT is low and you're like 2.5 years or less on
Hmm.
flipping all those tenants over to market rents and triple net leases and all that stuff, you're at a very low end of the cap rate range. So the
Yeah.
value has shifted so much to having a correct lease, which is, not a long lease term.
Yeah.
It's triple net with all the paybacks for insurance, taxes, and CAM, and no fixed renewal options. So fair market value, preferably no renewal options,
Hmm.
but fair market value. So if you don't have those, four things, like your value is trash today.
Yeah.
So those leases tell that story.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. We're actually, and yeah, speaking of that, we're actually in a deal right now, and there's some beef over the estoppel. So it's about renewals, and it's about what's how it was handled from the current owner, but transitioning ownership, and it came down time to get the estoppel signed, and there's some beef, man. There's some beef at the closing
It's
table. So
material.
yeah, so it definitely happens, and fine tooth and combing those things early on, and having those conversations early on. But some of those things you can't prevent, and things are lost in
Especially when
translation.
owners
And
don't want to give you information until you're under
I was gonna
contract.
say previous ownership, previous
Yeah.
ownership's like, oh, that's not the way I saw it. Um,
I see so much sloppy operations.
I,
The
I was
operations on
I
these
was
old
gonna
school
say
owners are so sloppy. It's crazy.
I was gonna say, I mean, Florida's known. I mean, we're known for being, Florida man, and like everybody kind of thinks we're like the wild, wild Southeast, and but in our market, so we're in Central Florida, and then in Miami, and like what it's like in South Florida, I'm sure you guys just see such a, it's such a melting pot, but B, as far as like the different types of ownership with like extreme high net worth individuals, institutional capital, the local players that have been there for 30, 40 years, or for a long time, like your family has. Man, what a crazy and interesting market. How is that to like? How is that? I mean, I guess you growing up there is one thing because you grew up in South Florida, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, for you to navigate, it's just like, hey, this has always been life. But I know the time that I've spent down there, it's a different speed, and I know in general in commercial real estate we deal with some characters, and it's a circus sometimes.
Yeah.
But I would imagine in South Florida it can be extrapolated some.
Yeah. No, it's pretty intense. So when I was a little kid, on my rollerblades on Lincoln Road, which is over $100 a foot triple net now in rent.
Oh
I would
my
be
gosh.
holding onto the trolley with like the old ladies or whatever, the senior citizens that would be like going around Lincoln Road. I guess that's what they did for the day. I'd be
Yeah.
holding on to that with my rollerblade. I'm like 8 or 10 or whatever. You could have bought any one of those buildings for like 50 grand. Like there was no value to any of that stuff. And
Yeah.
now it's like the most high street retail, kind of similar to like an Aventura Mall or a Bal Harbour Shops, which are some of the highest grossing revenue per square foot malls in the country.
Yeah.
Bal Harbour is number one in the country, I believe.
Wow.
So the value of these things has got shot up into the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars from 50 grand building. So it's been psychotic to watch, honestly. And I firmly believe, and I've been saying this for a long time to whoever the hell would listen, that we have, as a market, South Florida, have been dramatically undervalued for a very long time. Like when I used to see 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, some of these leases getting signed in various places in our market. I won't be specific to anyone or any location.
Yeah.
I just couldn't understand it. I didn't get it because I knew what was happening in LA. I knew what was happening in New York. I had family there. I had family over there. They're all telling me what's happening, and I knew generally we kind of follow them by a couple of years behind. And it just none of it ever made any sense to me. So I spent a lot of time trying to convince people to raise rents. My uncle Ben is always screaming at people to raise rents, and in the last 3 or 4 years, really thanks to like the whole surge after COVID or whatever,
Yeah.
I feel like we finally gotten to a place where we're at the value that we're supposed to be at. I feel like we're priced in. And even though there's a lot of like old legacy ownership stuff that people haven't been able to get to yet because of just leases haven't rolled or whatever, the deals that are being done now, I feel like are priced appropriately. I don't think they're overvalued at all, but I just don't think they're undervalued anymore. So it's
Yeah.
been fascinating as a local kid who grew up in Miami Beach, who's always been around real estate and never really had any money to do anything with, but just always watched from the sidelines, sort of.
Yeah.
It's been really fascinating. And I think it's just the beginning for rental rates and for asset prices for real estate down here, especially industrial. And I think we're kind of just getting started. And in a couple of years, when small bay industrial buildings are selling for $300 a foot, people are going to be really shocked, but I won't be.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, man. Early on in my career was I took a multi-tenant building out for like $55 a square foot, and there was certain players in the market that like laughed at me. They laughed at me, man.
There are always going to be those people. Just got to
They,
go.
they laughed at me, bro, and then the guy I sold it to, obviously very appreciative, and then he was talking about, we talked about value and whatever, and I think even this day, it's not many years later, I think we're probably closer to like 110 on that one, maybe 120 a square foot, like, but not too long after. So what the market's done has been crazy, but yeah, I think. In the shorter term, there's been a lot of the spike, and then it's like, hey, leveling out. But I think what you're saying is absolutely true, and that's what I've also kind of tried people with, of like even like home prices. It's like, hey, at one time, because friends that are buying homes for the first time, it's like $200 a square foot, like, which might sound super cheap to you guys, but $200 a square foot, it's like, man, I remember like 2-3 years ago they were like 120, 130, and like, which they were, but I used the explanation of like, hey, and I don't know this, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm saying like at one time, like California's home prices were $150 a square foot, $200 a square foot, and like those people were like really wish they would have bought back then.
Yeah.
So, and I think Florida, especially the political environment, the economic environment, how beautiful of a state it is, I think we're going to look good for a real long time in the Sunshine State.
There's
So.
no one I've met in the last couple of years that hasn't said exactly that. So the general consensus for everyone I've spoken to on this Florida issue, they're all in line. So it's got to be the truth, because it's impossible for everybody to have a single mind on that.
Right. And then, yeah, for everybody from across the country, too, to be like, hey, if the capital's all flocking here, it's almost, the one that has the gold makes the rules type thing of like, hey, this is the general consensus of the business and economic environment. And this is how decisions are being made with like, nobody's really sitting on their hands. It's like, hey, in Florida, hey, they're getting after it. And the people that are more on pause or sitting on their hands, if it's, Northeast or out West or wherever, they want to come to an environment that's moving and shaking. And, Florida's definitely the place. So,
Yeah.
well, cool, man. So I know we're about out of time here, but anything else before we go? And then also, if you could share, maybe one or two things, what's something that you're working on right now, or something in the next, 3 to 6 months of saying, hey, man, like this is what I'm looking forward to. This is what I'm really excited for the rest of this year.
Yeah. So on the personal side, it's taking more trips, whether it's with friends or with my wife Jess without the kids, or
Yeah.
with the whole crew, all 5 of us. My 3 kids. Getting those on the books is super important to me. My mindset has really shifted on that, and it's the single most important thing in my world right now is just getting us together, separate and with friends, and going out and just creating new memories and experiences. That's super important to me now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a couple of those trips this year. Some are already booked, and I'm working on booking more. And then on the business side, really just continuing to build out our business here. I mean, our growth has been so tremendous, and I'm so grateful to all of our clients for trusting us with billions of dollars in real estate.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about sometimes, but like we take it really seriously. So we're going to continue investing in our team, our infrastructure. We're going to continue building out our teammates and adding more people and investing in our business rather than just waiting for a listing to fall in our hands
Yeah.
and sitting on it and doing deals. We really want to take a proactive approach, not only for our clients and filling vacancies and finding them opportunities to grow their portfolio, but also just having a lot of intent behind what we're doing within our business and making
Yeah.
sure that we scale it and grow it as much as we can. So that's what I'm really focused on.
Yeah, being intentional, man, that's huge.
Awesome.
Gotta do it. So, man, thank you so much, man. You truly are. You're leading the market down there, and man, excited to connect and get to know you more. And I know this was very impactful for me, and I'm sure it was for everybody viewing it, man. So, Larry, man, thank you so much, and we'll see you again here soon.
Yeah, I just want to plug you real quick. You're doing an amazing job, so keep it up. Like you
Thanks,
came
man.
out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, who's this guy, Augie? What the hell are you talking about? He's selling buildings here. He's selling stuff. He's selling parks. He's doing tenant rep, and now I hear you're buying stuff. So I'm super excited for you. I'm really really happy for you, man. You deserve all of it. So just keep it up.
You showing love too, man. That's really appreciated. Yeah, I came into the market hot and heavy, and got out of college and said, hey, I have the football mindset, and was very grateful to play a lot of sports, and even had some hardships that put me in a position, and to have a certain mindset that I'm truly grateful for. Like you said, some of those things being learned early on, how I came into the market and the tenacity that I came into it with, and just what I do every single day. I mean, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing great, and that's something I try and teach my kids. So like, hey, if you're going to do anything at all, do it with all your heart. And if you're not going to, just don't do it at all. Find something else that you want to, that you can do with all your heart. So, well, cool, man. Once again, thank you so much, bro. And we'll see you again here soon.
You got it.